Hello, Mark Curry here. There are lots of words that I could use to describe our current health situation or our health crisis. Weird, surreal, strange, unbelievable. But as far as our industry is concerned, the business that we call show business, the word is uncertain. None of us, performers, people who are working in the theatre backstage, front of house, people who are working in television, technicians, none of us know when we will be working again. And those of us who don't know when we're working again, but who are lucky enough to have some financial security, can get through this period. But there are lots of people who are not quite so fortunate. And right now is a very difficult time for them. So I wanted to do my bit. And I'm putting together a series of conversations called Conversations with Mark Curry, with some famous faces, some of them mates, some people that you'll know, I'm sure. Just chatting to them about their lives, their careers, what they're doing now, their plans on hold because of this situation. And it would be great if you could enjoy those interviews and those conversations. But what would be really wonderful would be if at the end of watching those conversations, you could hit the donate button and just give whatever you can, which would really help performers, workers in theatre and television who are going through this very, very difficult time. So it's really easy. Sit back, enjoy it. And then when you finish watching, just go to the Acting for Others website, hit the donate button, and you'll be taken immediately to the Just Giving page. It's really simple. Just give as little or as much as you can. Thanks so much for watching. Hello and welcome to Conversations with Mark Curry, and this conversation is with a true showbiz legend. She's been performing since she was 7 years old. In fact, this year she's celebrating 50 years in show business, and if I was to go through everything that she's done in the theatre and on screen, I'd be here a very long time. But some of the highlights in theatre include Gypsy, Gone with the Wind, Cats, 42nd Street, Me and My Girl, Chicago, Paris of Penzance. And on screen, she was a massive hit in The Hot Shoe Show. She was a Doctor Who girl in the 80s. She was spectacular in Dancing on Ice. And of course, recently she had a wonderful success when she joined the cast of EastEnders. And she stayed for 3.5 years playing the character of Carmel. At the moment, she's supposed to be on stage at the Savoy Theatre in London playing Roz in 9 to 5. But like most of us in this business right now, she's resting. Well, she never rests, really. She is Bonnie Langford. Hello.
Hello, my darling. How are you?
I'm very well. 50 years in show business. What does it feel like when I say that?
Well, it's a bit scary. I mean, it's actually what it is. I started when I was 6, actually. So you've added a couple of years to me, and yeah, and then in fact, it's sort of 20. To be honest, it's this particular year, mainly being sort of. I'm going to say 2021 actually is officially when I first went on Opportunity Knocks, and then I was on Junior Showtime with you. And that's how far we go back. So yeah, it's a long time, but isn't it great? We're still going, or just about we're still going.
It is. I know. But you know, it's interesting because yeah, we have known each other such a long time. But even I am surprised when I look through all the stuff that you've done. It's truly incredible, that CV. You have never stopped.
No, I haven't. Thank God. I can't afford to. I can't afford to. I have to. If I have to stop, I might fall apart. Although, look what's happening to us all. We're all sort of. I don't know how you're feeling about this. The lockdown. I mean, obviously, let's take the actual situation, the pandemic, and all that out of the way. How are you feeling about being in your own home for such a long time?
Well, I'm quite enjoying that. I'm fine with that. But the difference is right now that we're all used to periods of not working and not knowing what's next. But you always know that the phone can ring or you get an email and something's going to start again. Actually, that can't happen right now, really. There are only very, very few opportunities. So that's what's weird. It's not knowing. If somebody said, listen, by December, we'll be fine, then you could kind of relax, but it could be longer. Yeah. We honestly don't know. And we've never faced that in our careers, have we? That's the thing. It's the word uncertain that's a real shock, I think.
Yeah.
When did you first know? Sorry, I was just going to say to you, because I know that you're supposed to be on stage, as I said, at the Savoy. When did you first get to know that 9 to 5 would be coming off?
I think it was the Monday, so I think that's the 16th of March. We went in to do the show. On the way in, I heard on the radio the 5 o'clock, update was about all cinemas, theatres, because up until then it had been a little bit vague, and it had been, public places, we might have to social distance, and it was all terribly vague. And then the minute that Boris mentioned theatres, we knew that in a way that's not going to bode well for anyone. Carried on as normal during the warm-up. So warm-up would be about 6 o'clock. So about sort of 6:15, we started hearing that Phantom wasn't doing a show. Les Mis, Lion King, all of those, they had cancelled their shows for that evening. And then we saw the producers had arrived and came on stage and said, we're going to cancel. Even at that point, we didn't know whether it was just for a few days, but as very, very quickly we realized that was going to be it.
So that week you did what, 2 or 3 shows?
No,
you did nothing.
No, we did nothing. We didn't
And
do any
people
shows
turned up, presumably people turned up to see the show.
Yeah. And yes, I mean, it was awful, because suddenly, very, very, very quickly, London started to sort of close up. And then even things like, because we were on at the Savoy Theatre, absolutely adjacent to the Savoy Hotel, and I got to know all the doormen very well, and they were all terribly worried, because they said, we're going to close. He told me that they were going to close the people who owned the Savoy had said they were going to close at the end of March for 3 months. And that was then. That was that night. So that was the 16th of March. And he was so worried, because he said, some of his co-workers were very young with children, and this was their this is their living. What are they going to do? So that was really quite, you couldn't quite imagine it. You just couldn't imagine it.
So what did you do?
We know,
did you all go for something to eat? Did you go for a drink, or did you just kind of go home?
Most people went home. Most people went home, because it's that funny thing, isn't it, about even when you're in a show, you kind of think, a night off, what fun. And then when it happens, and something happens, which is very rare, but occasionally the show can't go on. Occasionally it might be a case of, I've just seen that actually the while we've been in lockdown, the orchestra pit of the Lion King has flooded. 12 foot of water has gone in there. Yeah. Now, some things like that happen. I had that at the Yvonne Arnaud Theatre in Guildford. We've worked there together, and they moved heaven and earth. Anyone who works in the theatre will move heaven and earth to make that show happen, no matter what. So to cancel a show is always a very big deal. And it's only happened to me a few times, and it always, whenever it happens, you think, oh, got a cheeky night off. Oh, this doesn't feel right. It just doesn't feel right. I did actually go with a couple of people across the road to Joe Allen's and had a coffee, the restaurant there, which was empty and starting to sort of close up. And you couldn't quite imagine it. It seemed so weird and eerie.
Surreal. Everybody says surreal, but that is actually the word, isn't it? That's the word. So and where are you now?
Quickly, it's all gone.
Yeah. Where are you now in terms of the show?
Oh, it's done. It's done.
Is it?
Over.
It's over. Definitely over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, in some respects, I had a really bad knee injury, and I was hobbling my way through it. So there was part of me that was put my knee up, get better, but you still.
It's your age, love. It does happen. It's going to get worse.
I can't even go and get it fixed. I can't even go and get it sorted. So I'm trying to do it. Whatever. That's such a minor thing. But when you just think, well, maybe, and at the beginning as well, we were all crazy, going, oh, all these things I could have done to my house, and I can do this, and I can clear out all my cupboards, and I can do all this, and then that sort of immediate madness has now all gone, and it's difficult sometimes. It's really difficult. But I think what's good is the fact that, as I say, put away the fact that the people on the front line, the key workers, and anyone who is actually suffering from this, that is a whole different story. For those of us who are sort of this side of the line, very lucky to be just sitting waiting, it's very difficult not to feel that you can somehow contribute. And I think particularly with theatre and television is absolutely thriving, but we're running out of material, and that's got to be, we've got to start making some more telly. But how is that going to happen? Because everything about our job is about bringing people together. Yeah. It's about experiencing something in a room. It's about feeling something that you don't actually feel through a screen or on a headpiece or something. So I don't know quite how that's going to work, because I would fully understand if people feel uncertain about being in a room with a lot of people, and and yet what do we really want to do? We want to be together, we want to hug, we want to laugh, we want to smile, and how and when, but it will happen
It will
somehow.
happen.
Don't know
It
how.
will happen.
It will happen.
And of course, there is nothing, as we know from watching shows, there is nothing better when things are a bit weird in the world than to go into a theatre and see a fantastic show and lose yourself, lose everything in that 2 or 3 hours. And similarly, watching a program on television, that's I'm not really a great telly watcher, but I've really got into stuff during this. And
I know.
I thought, thank goodness for
Fantastic,
that
isn't
black
it?
box that we can just escape and
I
get
know.
into another world, really. Okay,
Yes,
enough about...
and at first, people were watching things that were all about the pandemic. They were sort of all about, well, how does this all work? And then it all became a little bit too real and a little bit too similar. And so I think now people are actually watching quite escapist and almost fun. They're looking for the laughter. They're looking for that, as you say, being able to be taken out of this and find music. And in the long run, I think we will all reconnect, and probably reconnect in a better place. We have to think that way, don't we?
Well, somebody the other night sent me a text saying, she said, I'm watching all the Doris Day shows from America, all the television shows from the 60s. And I said, great, I want to watch that. That would be wonderful to see that right now.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Wouldn't it just? Yeah.
Or you back in the 60s and 70s.
70s, thank you.
70s, sorry, not 60s. Listen, talking about that, let's go right back. Bonnie, Melody, Lizette, Langford. I didn't even realise that you had those names. But Bonnie works. Lizette and Melody, I'm not sure about those. Bonnie's the one, I think.
Well, I'm actually this. Hang on, I'll get it. Is that back to front in your screen?
Bonita, yes. Yeah.
I'm actually that.
I know you.
But the only time I've ever been called that is when I was in Bugsy Malone with you.
Yeah.
And because they took you as a kid, you had to have a license from the council. They took my name off my birth certificate, and then when they put it on the credits, they put that, and it's the only time it's ever been. I've never ever been that. Never. It's funny.
Wonderful. And of course, your mom, Babette, was she actually running a dancing school when you were born? The Babette.
Oh,
she was.
Yeah, what happened was, I probably should use this time to go back even further into sort of my ancestry, and I would love to do that, because my mother, her mother had 2 other sisters, and one of those was a professional dancer. She was a ballet dancer. She had danced with Pavlova, and toured the world doing, ballet pieces in various ballets, and then toured the world in variety shows doing The Dying Swan and all those sorts of things. Came back to England and opened a school, and then my mother took that over, and it became the Babette Palmer School of Dance. And my eldest sister, who is 10 years older than me, when I was born, she was just about going to the Royal Ballet School at White Lodge. So yeah, dancing was very much in the building.
So your earliest memories then really are of watching your sisters or watching your mom teach?
I think all those things. I remember, my very first appearance was on Richmond Theatre in southwest London. My mother's school was near there, and she would hire it because it was a community theatre. Beautiful Frank Matcham Theatre, but it was a community theatre, and she would hire it on a Saturday afternoon once a year to put on their, I think I called it a display then, show for all the parents to come and see their kids and see how they developed and cheer them on. And one year she would usually hold this show in July, but she was very heavily pregnant with me, and then I was born at the end of July, and so she postponed the show until about October, and I was carried on at the end of the show as the reason to say why it had been delayed.
Of course.
So yeah, I don't remember anything else than being in a building of that nature. I don't remember not being in that place and in that environment. It just seems like home to me.
You always wanted to be there. That's the thing, isn't it? Whereas some kids could be born to that environment and go, I don't want to be part of this. But you really did. You loved it, just as I did as well. I wasn't born in that, but I loved being a kid and being surrounded by all that. I just knew
Yeah.
That's what I wanted to do. And I think you were the same. You knew this is where you belonged.
Never questioned it. I feel so fortunate in the fact that I never had to think, "Right, what am I going to do with my life?" I didn't even think it. It just was a given. I didn't know that you actually decided. I thought it just happened. And for me, it was just, that was where I felt comfortable. And the more I think I learned about it, the more I thought the opportunities were great, because, you know, I love being in this place. And not only that, it helps me to grow as a person, because it sends me challenges and all these different things, and I get to play other people, and I can play, you know.
What I remember when we were doing Junior Showtime together back in the early 70s was that you would come up from London with your mother, sometimes with your mother and father. And the first thing that was really interesting was that your mum was full of show business. She was a total pro. She was feisty. She was with you. She was excited about it. She had opinions. Your father seemed to be so laid back, the complete opposite. They really were opposites, weren't they?
Totally. My father was absolutely the backbone, because he was utterly silent and would just be there. He was totally reliable. He was nothing to do with the business. I think in some respects, he enjoyed the business more than my mother, because she didn't really know anything about it. And he just enjoyed it. And he loved seeing his girls. I've got, you know, 2 sisters and myself. He was just proud as punch. And he basically would be the silent person in the back, always going and getting the car and driving us somewhere. And my mother would be the sort of the fire. And I think he was the absolute rock. Sadly, he's no longer with us. My mother is still with us, and hating this lockdown, because she can't teach, and she wants to teach, and she's 89. But, you know, that keeps her going, thank goodness. But she, you know, she is still, as I say, teaching to this day. They're doing apparently these classes. Some of her teachers are helping her doing classes on Zoom. And she said, I don't want to watch it anymore, because they're not trying hard. They're just messing around. Really? But yeah, no, there was never any pleasing my mother. There's never any pleasing her. But maybe that's what keeps her going, and that's what, in a way, keeps us going. And she, so she taught at her school. She would come up with me to Leeds, to Junior Showtime, have a fantastic time, and then we'd go back home, and that was it. And the thing is, my life, all this madness in our house, it actually didn't really involve me, because I had these 2 older sisters who were always, you know, quite dramatic, and I just used to sit in the corner very quietly. But if you asked me to do something in the correct environment, either on a television set or on a theatre, on a stage, I would do it. And often people would say, "Oh, I remember you when you were little, you would stand up and dance on the table." And I know they're lying, because I would rather have crawled in a hole. I would crawl in a hole, so I didn't have to do that. And in fact, I was talking to my daughter the other day about something. And I remember after I did Opportunity Knocks, I was sent to somebody for representation. And I went in for this meeting. I don't think I've ever told anybody this before. I went into this meeting at this person's very she flat come office. And first of all, I was met by these 2 giant poodles, who were so sweet and loving, but basically my head height. So they freaked the life out of me. And I was like, face to face with these dogs. Anyway, I had this meeting with these people, supposedly for representation. And they said, "Oh, would you sing us a little song? We hear that you can sing." And I said, "Oh, no, I can't sing any songs." And they said, "Well, you must know something." I said, "No, I don't know any songs." I knew every single song. I knew every single song in the charts, everything. And I said, "No, I don't know any songs." In the end, I sung a really bad version of Bar Bar Black Sheep. And afterwards, we got in the car to come home. I was there with my parents. And they turned to me and they said, why wouldn't you do anything? And I said, "Oh, I didn't like those people."
Wow.
And I wouldn't do
The
it.
environment wasn't right. You just felt it. Yeah.
Well, the environment and the people, I think kids, you know, when they say, "Oh, kids are pushed on the stage to make them do them," they might be once or twice, but not for long. It doesn't last.
And I know that you're the same now, and we've talked about this, and I think we both feel the same, that if somebody was to get you up from, if you're watching a show and somebody on stage was to come and grab you and bring you up on stage, you would be,
ooh.
Yeah, and I would too. Nobody can really understand that, can they? And that is a little bit of shyness that's actually in a lot of performers, and it's in you. You say Bonnie Langford, and people think about you performing all the time, but actually there's a part of you that is a little bit shy.
Well, I think it's a role. You know, I think when kids, particularly then, when you had a kid in a show, it was always all singing, all dancing. And one of the other shows I did when I was very young was Gypsy, and that is a showbiz kid. It's based on the true story of Gypsy Rose Lee and her sister June Havoc and her mother, Mama Rose, who was, this archetypal showbiz mum. So because I did that in London. I played Baby June, so that was Baby June Havoc. And within the show, there is a sort of a 10-12 minute section that is effectively supposed to be Baby June's act. Now, I was really, really lucky because I did the show in London at the Piccadilly Theatre, and then I was taken to America with the show. As I say, Angela Lansbury played my mum. It was just incredible. And when we were in New York doing our season there, June Havoc came to see the show. Now, June Havoc was Baby June. She was the person I was playing. She was the real life person, and my goodness, what a life she had. And she had never been to see the show before. She said I didn't like it much because I was only in the first half hour, because it was not about her. And she also felt that the story was, it was a musical fable. It's not actually the truth, and she didn't feel it painted her particularly well. And one of the things she also said, and I always felt that, they never represented the fact that my act was such a success. And she said, and that I could hold an audience for that time. And apparently, in it must have been the 30s, in fact, it must have been the 20s, when they were going around the vaudeville circuit, and she was doing her act, and she was earning $1,500 a week. That was a lot of money. And, and she was on this circuit with these big stars. She was a big star. And so, and I got to meet her. And then, those sorts of things, you just think, wow, this is absolutely incredible. But I think that's why people think I'm Mrs. Showbiz, because most of those parts have been performing as a kid, the kid on stage doing their performance, not necessarily the kid, being what they're like in the background. So it's been,
I know that
sometimes it's
Angela
a challenge.
Lansbury had a tremendous effect on you, didn't she?
Oh yeah. I mean, anyone who knows her, anyone who's met her, there's just something about her that is just incredible. I mean, what is she, 93, 93, I think. And she's an extraordinary woman. She's an extraordinary lady. And, both a huge star and an extremely personable human being, full of charisma and charm, and yet this ability to feel like you know her.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's incredible.
If we went through all the stuff you did just as a child, that would take a long time. Big success. Just William, the stage work, etc. You suddenly, Bugsy Malone, obviously. Then it gets to those teenage years, and it is difficult when you've been a performer as a child to actually get across those years, 14, 15, 16, when you're not quite as cute. Your talent is measured then against adults because you are an adult. Do you remember those years? And was it an easy transition for you?
Well, I think you're constantly transitioning, really. And I think the difficulty, I found it more difficult in my early 20s, actually, because I sort of got through those teenage years by saying, right, I'm going to only do a couple of things in the year, and I'm going to concentrate on my schooling. So that was fine. I did all that. Then at 16, I was in the original cast of Cats. And I sort of rode this wave of dance that became terribly successful and popular. And, I was and then musicals became very popular again. And, I sort of was part of that group. And then I got to about my early 20s. And I think I was tired. I needed to stop. And I also felt that I wasn't far enough away from being the baby or the little kid. And yet I wanted to do that thing of just being, accepted for what I am as a mature adult, and also needed to make some mistakes and needed to do things wrong. And I think I found that part the hardest of all, actually. But you're constantly transitioning. And there is, the funny part is, I'm so proud and grateful for all the things that I have done, but there's still sometimes, if someone will come and see something that I've done, and they'll go, but I remember just William. And you think, I should think, how wonderful. And I do, but I'm also thinking, you think that's me, don't you? And it's not me. So the fact that there's a great space. I mean, now if somebody says that to me, I go, "Oh, you're showing your age."
Yeah.
It throws it straight back at them. But there is a part of me that thinks, I wish I could be a little bit better about going, wow, isn't that great? Because there is an element where they think you're not acting, which is a huge compliment, but at the same time, it drives you a bit bonkers.
Yeah, I guess there are just certain shows, certain parts, certain things that you do that have such a big impact.
Mm.
It might not be a wonderful impact, but it has an impact, and it's in people's brains, and they just can't forget it. And also, when you were doing Just William, there weren't that many things on television. There wasn't that vast array of stuff, array of material that there is now. So things really did stand out.
3 channels.
Yeah.
3 channels.
Yeah.
It was only on a Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever been repeated. And I was only in 9 episodes in 2 seasons and a Christmas special. I was only in that many. And I wasn't meant to be in that many at all because they were looking for a 6-year-old and I was 12. And I was sort of on the last leg of auditions. They'd seen The World and His Mother. And then actually my dad took me to that audition because I was asking him what it was, you know, what was this, who was this character? And he'd read the books as a little boy. So he was explaining it to me. And you know, and it was so funny because I did this audition. I went into this room with all these people sitting around a table and they were all very charming. And the scripts that I got were all written with the lisp. So it was because Violet Elizabeth had a lisp, and so if you had the word 6, it was spelt THIXTH, and so it was quite hard to decipher. But anyway, I had these sides. I read them. I read this scene, and they were all killing themselves laughing. And you know that terrible feeling when you think, okay, is this going well or is this going really badly? Am I really doing this badly? Fortunately, I was like, but you know, the actual doing of it, I adored. It was just beautifully made. It was like a junior upstairs, downstairs. Really, that was the team that made it. Yeah. And so, you know, the further away I get from it, the more I can appreciate it. And the power of that was ridiculous, wasn't it? I had no idea. So, you know, and as you say, you would get huge figures for something that was really a small thing, but because we had much less, and you had to watch television when it was on, you couldn't watch it later.
And particularly Sunday afternoon, that was when the whole family came together. I think that was the difference then, that the whole family watched television. Yeah. And with children's programs, there'd be a cross-section of people watching them, whereas now kids have their own channel, and they're not really often watching television as we know it. They're watching it at all different times and all different mediums. I mentioned all those shows that you've been in, all those theatre shows, and you said Cats you found challenging. So if I was to say to you 2 or 3 shows, 2 or 3 parts that really stand out for whatever reason, what would they be?
Well, I might have to be a bit more than 2 or 3. Okay. So I mean, obviously, Baby June and Gypsy, because it was just such a wonderful experience. And Cats being part of something that was so different and so innovative, and you know, it's still going. I mean, it isn't going, but it's going. There are generations doing it now, people doing it now who weren't born. You know, and we're coming up, I think actually next year. So it's only a few days ago that it was the birthday of it, and next year is the 40th birthday of Cat. I mean, we didn't think it would last 4 days. It was either, we knew it was going to be a Marmite show. It was either going to be loved or hated. And look, isn't that incredible? And to think that you know, I was part of something at age 16 in that is still going. So that was a huge one. Have
you seen the film, by the way? Have you seen the film? Yes,
Zizi's in it. My niece is in it.
I didn't know that. I haven't seen it. And?
Yes, you need to see it.
Okay.
It's different.
Like that. I knew that's the word you were going to say.
I say nothing.
Okay, move on. Next show.
It's not quite the one I don't think that T.S. Eliot wanted. But anyway, what have you? Everyone's got a different take. And yes, I did go and see it, and I had a lovely time. And so that's quite fun. And Zizi got her flat from it, so that's great. Those, you know, this is the thing, isn't it? You know, people say, oh, you know, you're in this show and you chose to be doing this or something. And you know, sometimes you go, but I do it as a living. And sometimes you think, I'm going to be in this show, it's going to be fantastic, and I'm playing this part and this part, and it just doesn't come across. And this is what we thought with Cats when we started it. You know, I went into it at 16. I didn't mind what it was. I was just thrilled to be part of it. It seemed terribly exciting. But through the rehearsal period, it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. And we literally, until we did that first preview, we didn't know if we were going to be laughed off the stage, because some of it was just so different. And, you know, it's like baking a cake. You can shove in all the best ingredients you can, and it still isn't going to rise. It's not going to be any good. So that's one of the exciting things about our job, and also one of the frightening things. And sometimes if you're in a show and it goes well, but it's not actually how you planned it to be, you still have to turn around and go, yeah, it's great, I love it, it's fantastic, come and see it, when you're really thinking, please don't, although I'm just having, you know, it's a job. You can't always have the ones that you enjoy. I loved, well, we did Sweet Charity, that was brilliant. I loved doing that. 42nd Street, I did in the what was it, the 90s, I think it was, and I played Peggy Sawyer, and that was on the road, and I found that very difficult because I was in a very bad place in my head. I was very tired. I was that person that didn't feel far enough away from being a kid, and was just still tapping my toes and thinking, this is not right. And what's so wonderful about that is that year before last, I got to go back to the show when it was in this fantastic production at the Theatre Royal Drury Lane, 59 people in the cast, and I played Dorothy Brock, the diva. I'm the only person who's ever played the young girl and the diva. And we also made a film of it, and it's on in cinemas. Well, no, it's not in cinemas. It's on, you can stream it on an app called Broadway HD. And I think in a couple of weeks they're going to stream it for the week for free. You can do a trial and you can watch 42nd Street. And so, you know, it's funny, isn't it? At the time when I did 42nd Street, when I was in my 20s, I loved it, but I was very unhappy. And then I was able to bookend it by doing it in the most fantastic way. And all that magic came. You never really know why you're doing something, and you hope that it all ties together in the end.
And Chicago.
Oh, Roxy in Chicago. Yeah, Roxy in Chicago. I love doing that too. She's great. She's great because she's naughty, and I love her. And the choreography was well, it was based on Fosse's choreography. With Sweet Charity, I got to work with Gwen Verdon on that actual Fosse choreography, Bob Fosse choreography, which was pretty amazing. And then when I came to do Chicago, it sort of was already in my body, which was lovely. I was able to really enjoy that show, which I've done on and off all over the place, here and in America.
And on television, when I look back to Dancing on Ice, which wasn't that long ago, I know that was it that you were a standby?
Yeah.
Then somebody actually hurt themselves, and so you went into it, and then that was a real turning point, wasn't it, for you?
Well, I think so. It's one of those things. Again, you see, I never really quite know when anything's going to happen and what's going to happen from it. It was the time when everybody was doing Big Brother and I'm a Celebrity in the Jungle and all that, and I was like, I can't do any of those things. I can't bear it. And then they came along and they said, we're doing this program. At that point, it was called Stars on Thin Ice. And I said, oh, do you want me to be a judge or something and judge the sort of the dance element? And they went, no, I think we want you to be in it. And I went, but I can't skate. They said, no, that's the point.
We definitely want you to do that.
Why did you do it? Oh. And so I thought, oh, and then I thought, well, if it's Torval and Dean, and I knew a lot of the team, I knew a lot of the, you know, I knew the director, I knew the producer, and I knew the costume designer, and I thought, well, it's not going to be tacky, and they're going to want it to be classy. And I suppose the only funny part and the good part is the fact that it's down to me whether I look an idiot or not, and I don't mind particularly looking an idiot, but you know, it's not that you can laugh with rather than at. And so I got my neighbour at the time, who was an ice hockey player in the local team, to take me on the ice, and it was just you know, as a dancer, you don't bend your knees and stick your bottom out and flex your feet and glide and turn them in. You straighten your legs, you turn your legs out, you stand on point. It's just awful. I couldn't cope, but I found it hilariously funny. Anyway, I
You
went
could
and
really
did
hurt
a
yourself. That
trial,
would get to
and
me. I think I could actually
oh
really.
yeah. Well, my sister said to me, she said, "But darling, why do you want to do that? You'll break your leg." I said, "Well, I kind of hope not, but whatever." And I figured if I was trained by the best, I couldn't really turn that down. But what happened was that when I went for my first sort of trial, I went to Queensway in London, and John Barrowman was there doing arabesques, across the ice, going, "Look at me!" And I went, "No, no, please, I can't do that. I can't do that." And they said, "Well, the first thing we're going to teach you is how to fall over." I went, "Oh, that one I've got." And so I just thought, well, at least the transition will be great if that happens. Anyway, they said, "Look, we'd rather you just sort of the reserve." So I went, "Oh, okay, that's fine, because then I don't have to worry about it too much." Didn't get any of the training in. Went and had a little session with Christopher Dean one day, which seemed a little odd. They went, "Oh, we'd love you to come in and just meet Christopher Dean." I went, "Well, I can't turn that down. How wonderful." And then about 2 days later, they said that somebody was injured, start training, and I sort of tried to, but by then it was Christmas. And then about a week later, they said, "We want you in the program. We go live in 2 weeks." And in a way, it was great, because I had no idea of what was expected, and I also didn't realize at that point that you could say no to Torvill and Dean. And so when they went to say, "Right, this is going to be your first routine on the ice," they said, "Right, we're going to spin you around, and then you do this bit there, and then you go over there, and then you put your leg in the air, and then your partner sort of starts to spin round, holding your leg, and then you take the other leg off, and then he spins you around like a baseball bat." And I just went, "Okay." And then when I tried it, I cracked my head on the ice. And that's why they called it the headbanger.
Oh, really? You, Chris, it was your
Yeah.
fault. It was you.
And that was what they made me do in the first episode of the first series ever. The first series, the first show, I had to do the headbanger. I mean, they had make people do it since, but not at the very beginning.
But you see, that says something about you, because a lot of people, even though it's a high-profile show, a lot of people at that point would have walked. But there's something in you that says, "I'm going to get this. I can beat this."
Yeah. Yeah, I won't be beaten. I
You
think if something's been thrown down as a challenge, I don't feel comfortable walking away from anything. I'll always give it a bash, even if I turn around and go, "Need to be sensible here." So yes, literally give it a bash.
Yeah, you are amazing, because I remember coming to see you in Peter Pan, and I popped backstage before the show, and you sounded not great. You had a temperature, laryngitis or something, and I thought, I think I was coming to the matinee, and I thought, surely she's going to not do the matinee and save herself and do tonight. You were out there, nobody would have known. I knew, because I'd seen you before. Just incredible, just incredible.
Well, there is something about Dr. Footlights, isn't it? That saying they say, "Dr. Footlights will make it better," and there is that. But it's not necessarily the best thing in the long run. I don't know. I just feel that, especially with theatre, when people have bothered to pay a lot of money quite often, and it's about the getting there and the whole package. It's not just the show. If they've come to see you do something, the least you can do is be there. They'll never understand if you turn around and say, "Oh, I'm off because I wasn't well," or something. I don't know. I don't know. I think I have to think I'm superhuman and keep doing it. But
an old parole.
I think it's important to at least give it a go.
Let's move on to EastEnders. I couldn't believe that you were in it. I bet you couldn't believe you were in it. How did it happen?
Well, I was doing a show in London at the Savoy called Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, and there was another person in the show called John, who was the swing, which means that's somebody who understudies lots and lots of parts, and basically goes in and fills in all the gaps. They're the most incredible people. They learn so many different roles, and at the drop of a hat, they can turn around and go, yeah, I'll just do that. I find it difficult doing my own part, let alone anybody else's. And so he was on one night, and at the beginning of the show, we all used to sort of congregate on the stage. And he said, "Oh, can I have a quick photograph of you and me together?" Because he was making his entrance with me. He said, "Because my friend is an absolute, he adores you, and he'll be so thrilled." And I said, "Oh, who is this?" And he said, "Oh, he's the executive producer of EastEnders." And so he sent him this picture. Anyway, cut a long story short, I don't know whether that had sown a seed or something like that. And we were just about to finish in Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, And I get this message saying, would I be interested in going in and reading for a part? And I said, yeah, absolutely. So I went down, and they didn't have any sides for me to read until I got there, and they gave me these different sides. One was really funny and one was really dramatic. And so I just thought it was just really nice. I didn't meet the executive producer then. They said he was busy. And then I got asked if I would do this part for 8 episodes. And that on the first day that I went in to meet the executive producer, who I'd spoken to on the phone and things since then, and I went in, and he had a brochure of me in Peter Pan and asked me to sign it. And I said, are you sure you're not? And then I did this. I didn't realize, I thought I was just having a cup of coffee and saying hello. And I ended up with some other writers coming in, and one of the story editors, and who I've heard from this morning actually, and they were asking me all these sort of questions. It was a questionnaire about, what do you think your character would do in this situation? What do you think? What color does she like? And I'm thinking, I have no idea. And no, just think about it. What you would do? Then they started singing Sondheim, and I kept looking around and going, are Ant and Dec going to pop up any minute now? Because this has to be some kind of a wind up. But no, it wasn't. And I ended up joining the show, and then I ended up staying 3.5 years. So it was great.
Do you think they were just testing you at that point? Because obviously you were known, they knew you, or they thought they knew you, but stepping into something like that, so real, where people really believe in the characters, do you think they were just testing at that point?
I think they were testing, and I mean, one of the things that there were a few. Funny enough, when I first went into it, they had this scene where I was supposed to be teaching somebody how to dance, and I said, "Oh no, please don't. Let's say she can't. Let's make it that she can't.
Yeah.
Because let's make it that it's not me. It don't represent anything of me." Because funny enough, I've been in Doctor Who as well. I was in that for a couple of years, and my character was desperately trying to make the Doctor fit. And apart from that kind of, I think, being quite annoying, because as from myself as a person, I don't like the idea of people telling people to fit. I'd rather have the idea myself. So it always makes out that person is annoying. Apart from anything else, I said, no, don't make it connect to me, or to the person I've been in my life, maybe, at all. Let's make it so that she really can't do anything. She doesn't have any coordination. She thinks she can, but she can't at all. And so I really stuck with that, and they were really great, because they said, no, okay, we'll change it, we'll make it so that
do you have any say at all, or any influence on the storylines when you're in something like that?
No, I mean, no, not really. I think sometimes they might talk to you. When I was in the show, it was terrific, and I loved it when I would get a script. You get your scripts through, and you go, right, do. And at first, when I went in it, they said, we'll usually call you up every few months and talk about what we think is coming ahead for your character, and if you've got any suggestions. And the only time they did that was when they were, I sort of finished up with this huge time, which was really, really challenging, but also I felt privileged to do. They had, because in the end, we had this whole family. Suddenly, they created this family, which was wonderful. This young, and they used the platform that is such a wonderful platform as the Star to make this knife crime happen on the day of the royal wedding, and so she time. And what was so incredible was that I said, don't make this just week, it's done and everything goes back to normal, because it's such a catastrophe, it's such a terrible tragedy in everyone's life, just the person and mother or the immediate family. And as they do with these soaps so brilliantly, it is wonderful to be able to show the ripple effect, the consequences that actions have on all sorts of different people. Of course, my story was all sort of me as the mother, and the breakdown, and it was great, because suddenly you just saw her unravel. And I was able to, I did quite a bit of research and met with people. And what was lovely, I was able to actually talk to the writers, talk to the producer, and you know, I fed a few things in that I had heard to make it even more poignant. And then in the end, which we had a whole group of people, real life people. That sounds wrong, but people whose sons had all been, and daughters had been victims of knife crime, and they came and they appeared as almost ghost-like characters. And then we thought they were so involved that BBC did a series of documentaries where they spoke to camera and they told their whole story about what had happened. Yeah. And we just hope that it made a difference, if nothing else, to conversation within the generations of, and just to see what happens, especially for young people, to see the effect that has, and maybe we could open a conversation at dinner and talk about it.
Well, I think the impact was absolutely immense. And I know, and maybe people don't realize just how instantly you've got to produce that emotion, because in a program like EastEnders, which is they're recording so many episodes, you haven't really got time to do 2 or 3 rehearsals or question with the director or go into it. How should I do this? You've got to do it. You've got to do it. How difficult was that to do?
Well, you get used to it, with as far as, you know, all the scripts and all the learning, the constant learning. And some of the cast members who were just, I mean, I walked into there when I first started, I was just overawed by the whole thing, because it is this massive thing that just keeps moving. It never ever stops, except for now. And you know, you're constantly learning. But actually, one of the other artists said to me, "You don't learn, you remember." And that's true. You do a lot of that short term, and then you have to delete it, because otherwise you just don't have time. But also, because you do a lot of it out of sequence, as you say, especially when you're doing a big storyline, it's 12 hours solid. You have a 45-minute break for lunch, but then you're generally looking and thinking, what am I doing next? It's usually always out of sequence. With things like the knife crime story, we had to do the main sort of scenes all after the actual event had happened, or before the event had happened. It was all back to front. And there was one day I was doing 17 scenes in one day, and it was, you know, a case of, you know, do we do this quickly before, you know, do we do this drama before lunch or after? Should we have lunch? But no, and it, you know, although you have to dig very deep and invest very quickly, what's so brilliant about so is that they're able to get to that place very fast. And I think, I mean, for myself as an actor, I know that there are some actors who like to stay and like to, they don't talk to other people, or they might talk as that character all the time. I'm not like that. I think that you're on set, you talk to your fellow artists, you talk to the camera crew. It's a job that we're all doing. But in a situation, sometimes the darkest situations, the darkest scenes that you're playing, you have to actually have some relief, and you have to sort of chat to the rest of the crew and the cast, because it can affect everybody. But what's important is that you're doing the best you can, and yeah, you just have to dig deep and get in there quickly and get on with it.
Well, you certainly did that. Would you go back? Could you go back?
Yeah, I would go back, actually. Yeah, I would go back. I mean, I was really keen with Carmel, was the fact that she was broken, you know, and the people that I was fortunate enough to meet, and people who come to me on the street, I mean, they will pour their heart out. And the fact that I have that privilege to be receiving of that, and almost maybe representing that, and hopefully doing it accurately, is what's so important. And what I felt was really important was that character was then different. She would never ever be the same again. She should never be the same again. And yet you don't want somebody moping around being ooh all the time in a drama. You can't have that all the time. So it was about creating that sort of light and shade. So I thought it was important that did get nothing else. So I guess she could come back. She's in Dubai at the moment.
So that door is definitely open. That door is open. So when we get over this current crazy situation, is there anything that you might be doing to talk about right now?
No idea. No, nothing at all. I have never, ever had a blank diary, and now I have. I was meant to be doing something at the end of the year. That's gone. I don't know. I don't know. And you know what? Although it's really weird, we're all in the same boat.
We're on the same boat.
So it's actually, and I think when we do get back going, however that may be, whether it's film, TV, theatre, all those things, once people feel safe to go out, and that includes us, you know, we're all human. Once we feel safe, and once maybe there's a vaccine or antibodies or something, I think everyone is going to desperately want to be entertained, and hopefully be there and we're ready to do it.
Well, there's been something there for you since, what, 1970, 1969? So I think there'll be something.
71. 71. I know.
What about writing a book? What about writing a book? 50 years in show business? What about a book?
Oh, no. Well, I did think about that, and I did talk about it. And then I get to it, and I think these stories, and I think, who's that interested? And I'm supposed to be doing it now. I'm supposed to be doing it, kind of. But then I also think, well, there's going to be so much else to talk about, and maybe I should leave it another 10 years. I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
maybe.
Just,
because you know what will happen.
But then
you'll write it, and then something amazing will happen, and you'll have to write about that, or I don't know. You know, you'll get married again, or something incredible.
Well, I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess the positively change, but our memories either change it a bit, and or we get. So maybe I should be writing stories now, so that they're just put away for when I do want to go and look at them and go, I didn't remember that bit about it, because, you know, I might go doolally by tomorrow. You never know. I've forgotten
Are you on your own in lockdown, or are you with BB, your daughter?
I'm with my daughter BB, and we're getting on fine. We're having a great time. We're trying to find things to do, and just, yeah, she's at theatre college, and they've stopped and said whenever they get back, they will pick up again, which is wonderful. But it's so hard for young people, because, you know, they can't do anything. Thank goodness we've got this, you know, technology that we have these days. People like me and you, we're kind of like, oh, how does all this work? The kids are like on it, but after a while, it's not the same. You just want to be with somebody, and because we've not really got the events, I think that's what's difficult for us all. We're not able to feel contributing in many ways, because there's no events happening that we can join in, or we can participate, we can ask, we can hopefully, you know, whatever we need. But it's sort of difficult to come together. And I think for young people, it's lovely to be with the family and maybe seeing us all differently, but at the same time they're itching to get back together. They're itching to do stuff again, and hopefully they'll all, you know, this will be a huge thing in their lives, and the world, as I say, hopefully might change a bit. We've got lovely blue skies and birds tweeting, and things that we've maybe not paid attention to in the past, and we might pay more attention in the future.
Exactly. Well, one great thing about this time is that we've had the time to do this, which is just wonderful. And the time has flown by. I don't know, we've been talking for nearly an hour. I hope people have stayed with us. I'm sure they have, because it's been absolutely fascinating. And I just want to thank you.
You are so brilliant.
I want to thank you on behalf of Acting for Others for giving up your time and talking to us. And I know why you're doing it. It's why I'm doing it, just to give back a little bit to our industry, to the people who are not having a great time right now. But for the moment, Bonnie Langford, just fantastic to talk to you. And here's to another 50 years, kid.
Thank you, darling, and you. And I just send my love and strength to everybody to get through this, because we will, somehow.
We will. Great. Thanks to Bonnie. Thanks to you for watching. Don't forget to donate. Just press donate. It'll take you straight through to the Just Giving page. Just give whatever you can for Acting for Others. Thanks a lot for joining us. Thank you so much for watching that conversation. If you've enjoyed it, please go to the Acting for Others website, which is actingforothers.co.uk, and hit the donate button, which will take you immediately to the Just Giving page. And please give as little or as much as you possibly can to help those performers and people in the industry who really need your help financially right now. Thanks a lot.